Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It is fine Wednesday afternoon. A few of your names look familiar to me, so I'm very excited to be with you for the next 1.5 hours just to show you the changes that we did on the mobile data collection part of the SENS V3. And without further ado, oh no, maybe I should introduce myself. Very sorry about that. I think some of you might know me. I'm Sandra CUTOFF, the technical director of CUTOFF, and I've been supporting the MDC part of the SENS for the public health section since 2009, basically since we started out with this. All right, then I think without further ado, I'll just start with the presentation. If you have questions in between, you can put them maybe in the chat, and then we'll take them at the end of the sections. We'll then look at your questions, and then if there are more, then at the end, if the time permits for that. All right, so let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see the screen? Chen, is it working out?
Yes.
Yes, it's visible.
Excellent, great. All right. Then the agenda of today is we first want to show you a little bit of the overview of the structure of the SENS V3 forms, and then dive a little bit into the new aspects on the SENS V3 forms, where we look at what is kind of new, like the consent or demography and mortality, which many of you haven't used before, what's new on the anthropometry, the health, anemia, and the child form. And then also what's new on food security, mosquito net coverage, and the WASH form. And then a very small glimpse on how to adapt the SENS V3 forms. I mean, this is not a webinar to actually show you in detail how to adapt the forms, but just where you can find help instructions and so on and so forth. All right. Then in terms of the new SENS V3 forms, we have now 5 different mobile templates. We have one that's demography, which is a new one. And then we have also combined demography and mortality one, in case you were combining demography with the mortality part as well. And then, and that's new, we have combined the household questionnaires, food security, WASH, and mosquito net into one questionnaire. And we have done some changes on the SENS child questionnaire, which are linked to the Z-score especially, and then the women questionnaire, which hasn't really changed all that much. So in terms of the modules, so if you wish to collect demography and mortality, you use the module 1. So that's the respective forms that you use. For the module 2, which is on anthropometry and health, you would use the child form, obviously for the children, and the women form for the women. And on the module 3, which is the anemia, it's the same. That's all embedded into the child and the women form as well. And for module 4, you use the child questionnaire, which contains the IYCF part. For the module 5, which is the security, you use the SENS food security WASH mosquito net, which is the combined household form. Same for the module 6, which is covering the mosquito net, use the same form, and module 7, also the same form, because this is all encompassed in the same form. So here you get a little bit of a visual overview as well. We'll be sharing this presentation with you after the webinar, and then you can also have a look a little bit later on that as well. All right. So what's kind of new in terms of the consent? We have modified the consent questions a little bit. So on the demography and the mortality, and no matter which of the two you are using, since this is supposed to be the first form that you use when you enter into a household, because you do all the household demography and note down on who's like part of the family, etc., you actually have the consent on using the MDC. And obviously, if this one is not given, then you cannot continue with the MDC part, and you would need to use paper forms to fill in the survey. And in those modules, we have also included the question on the consent on the use of the GPS, if you are planning to use a GPS to GPS the households. For the Anthropometry and the health, anemia and IYCF, this consent is embedded directly in the child and in the women form. And this has actually been given for each child and every woman that is being asked. Since in a household, a woman could be agreeing, one woman could be agreeing, and a second woman could actually be disagreeing. So this is why this is for each and every individual. And then the GPS coordinates as well, but only if you set it up that way. So by default, you actually don't see the GPS coordinate question at all, because there are not that many, currently there are not that many operations that use it, and that's why we are hiding it by default. I'll show you a little bit later on where you can find it, that you can actually remove this hiding, and so that the question actually appears. It's very straightforward and easy to do. And so for the food security, mosquito net, and the WASH, there is a consent for interviews for all of these modules, actually, since people could be opting out for one module or could be opting in for all of them. So just that you're aware. So each of these modules have their own consent question included. And then also in the end, again, for the GPS coordinates, if it is being enabled as well. So this is a little bit how it looks like. I'm moving this down so that you can see. So this is the first one, was consent given for conducting the interview, and then you can click here yes or no, whatever it's going to be. For the modules 2 to 4, you can see that how it looks like. Was consent given for conducting the interview? Yes, no, and for the women, yes, no, and absent as well. Okay. For the modules 5 to 7, you can see now how it looks like for the food security interview. Yes, no, for the mosquito net and for the WASH interview as well, so that you actually need to indicate that for all of the modules. And then this is how the GPS consent question looks like. Was consent given for taking the GPS coordinates of the household? Same thing by default. This one is not enabled in the demography or the demography and mortality module. It will only be enabled once you have taken the decision as a survey coordinator that you want to take GPS coordinates or not. This is then how it looks like if it has been enabled for the forms that you can just click on Start GeoPoint. You really should be considering well on whether you want to use the GPS coordinates. We have compiled a document with tips and also to help you on whether it makes sense in your current setting, on whether you should be, or whether it would be, let's put it that way, a good idea for you to use the GPS or not. The reason why we've changed it to be at the end of the form in comparison to the VT versions is we found it can actually slow you down in the beginning because you should be taking it like outdoors and sometimes, depending on how crowded the situation is, you will probably might have to move away a little bit from the household, and this could be a little bit disruptive. So it would be easier to do that at the end when you're kind of leaving the household anyways, and then you could be adding it. That's one of the reasons why we've put it to the end, in case you're wondering. All right. Are there any questions up to now? All clear?
I didn't see any from the chat box.
Okay.
Does anyone have the question? Quick question, raise the hand. No, okay.
Okay, great.
Over back to you.
All right, great. Thank you. So the demography form, this is kind of new. Some of you might have used it before. We had like a prior version that was used, I think, 2 years ago, and then some of you might have been piloting this version already last year. I guess it's pretty straightforward on what to do for the demography form. It's basically looking into the household and its demographics. I'll just show you a little bit on the emulator in a second. The difference with the mortality form is that that you also include the household members that have left the household and household members that have died since a specific start date as well. And the way the form is actually set up is in a way that it's kind of made as easy as possible. I wouldn't say it's kind of completely easy, as easy as possible to actually copy and paste the results from the form into your ANA software for your analysis as well. The instructions on how to use this can be found on the web page, on the SENS web page. You're basically downloading it together with the demography and mortality form on the web page, and then you can. It's a zip file, and then the instructions are included in that zip file. So let me just get to the emulator. No, sorry. Here it is.
We can see it.
Excellent. Cool. So let me open one of them. I've already filled all the first part so that we can go a little bit faster. So I'll start with the consent question. And then next, I'll just fill also the sex of the household, age, put something up. This is all. This is obviously all the parts that you would need to fill later, since this is the global form. This doesn't make all that much sense to a certain extent. And now here we are at the total number of the household members. Just to make it kind of easier, I'll just enter 3 for now. And then you are being asked to enter those. I'll just do test 1 up, male, and then we'll take our head of household here, and then yes, joined. And then the next one is household member up, test 2. Let's put male 24. SENS yes, because this is a female, so why not take yes? And household member 3, test 3, up. Let's put 4. Up. Okay. And then here, what left the household total number, and let's put 1. Then you see how that works. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. 1 name. Then that's test 4 now. Up. Male. let's put 10. Yes. And then for the died as well, let's put 1 here. And that would be test 5 now. Let's put 75. No, let's put nope. Okay. And now you would be you're starting the rest of the demography and mortality. I mean, I just wanted to demonstrate really how it works with the ones that have left and the ones have died, for those of you that haven't actually seen it. Okay, then let me save these changes and let's go back to the presentation. Any questions on the demography form before I dive into the child form?
I didn't see any from the chat box. Again, if anyone have the question, want to raise the hand? No.
Okay.
You?
Right. So now this is the part that I'm really excited about because it took us quite a while and quite some we put quite a lot of thought and tests into it in kind of really improving the flags for the SAM and the MAM, and the full expert on this is actually Ho Chin, because she together with the module that we had from UNICEF, we actually managed to fine tune the calculations or the flags behind it. Extent we're not maybe not all of the children are being flagged, but a much higher number than with the previous version that we had in the SENS version 2 before, and also more than what we had in the demo versions that you piloted last year as well. So this is kind of the really exciting part. So basically, the way they are being calculated, you are getting much closer.
Sandra?
Yes?
We lost you in 1 minute, second.
Oh yeah? You mean
Yeah.
you lost my audio, or?
Right. Yeah. Your audio. If you could start the sentence you just mentioned.
Okay. Yes, I was saying with the new version, it is possible that a second measure, no, with the new version, we get much closer to actually flagging the SAM and the MAM conditions, as with the previous version. And there is also a second measurement triggered always for the SAM conditions as well. There could also be a second measurement triggered for implausible measurements, like if the height and the weight in the way they are set up for that age group seem implausible, then a second measurement could be triggered as well. And then there's a fully revised IYCF section on the form as well. So just to recapitulate before I'm actually going to show you on the emulator, the flag for SAM is actually triggered on the form for each child when either the MUAC is below the 115. Now, this is not you. This is something that we had in the previous form as well. Or when the bilateral edema is yes, this is also something we had before. And then for the WHZ, -3, yes, and that part is being improved in the new version. And of course, if the enrollment for malnutrition treatment is no, because if the child is already enrolled, then you don't need the extra flag. And as I said before, if the SAM is detected, then a second measure of the child will be required in the form, and that looks a little bit like that. I'm just going to jump back to the emulator so that we can actually see that. Let's use child form, because I've also filled the first parts already, so it's a bit faster. Okay, so let's start from here. So let me change this. We'll put 13 months. And then that's the arrived before, presently in the household, yes. And then we put, let me just change this, 8.7 as the weight, add a close on. Then the length, we'll put 87. Let's put laying down. And the age of maybe just 1, it could be lying down rather. No, so that's also clear. The MOAC, we will put 137, so it's clear that we won't be triggering anything because of the MOAC. And then you can see I get this notification. I should be remeasuring and entering the data for the child, just to make sure everything is clear. And then it actually re-asks me also to put the age, because the implausible or the implausible range or the SAM condition could of course also be based that I have misentered the months as well. So I'm just redoing it, and let's assume that everything was completely correct as I put it, because indeed that are the right measurements of the child. So still laying down, and the MOAC is still 7. Okay, it's currently not being treated. It's not being enrolled anywhere. I pre-filled this, so yes, it has all gotten this. The intestinal worms as well. No diarrhea. And then the haemoglobin for the anemia, I'm going to put 7.0 so that this is actually not being triggered. And now you can see I get this. Child 1 needs to be referred for severe acute malnutrition. Please fill out the referral form. One slip is for the mother, a caregiver, and the other one is for the health facility. So this is basically how it looks like for SAM. Now going to MAM. Just as a reminder, the MAM is actually being triggered if the MOAC is in between the 115 and 125, and the weight for height score, Z-score, is between -3 and -2. And of course, again, the same thing, if enrollment needs to be set for no, actually. For the MAM, usually a second measure is not necessarily being triggered, except if I said that the combination of weight and height that has been inputted seems impossible and implausible, then that could actually be triggering also a remeasurement. Just going to show you on the emulator as well. Up. Okay, I'll just go. Okay, maybe I'll actually go through this as well, so that you can see the changes that are on there. And then I'll enter a second child. No. Up. This is something that you kind of are very familiar with. this is the part, and since the child was 13 months, that's why all the IYCF questions come up. Milk and yogurt. Say yes. What is in porridge? No. No water-based liquids. Yes. Up. Okay. And then this is the food part that you know very well as well. This. Yes. No. No. Okay. Now we are adding a new child number 2. And this is test 2. Let's say child 2. Oh, doesn't matter. Let's leave test 2 male. Now I'm just going to enter the months. 30 months now, so a bit older than the last. Yes. And we put 1.8. Yes. And the length is 7.56. At 30 months, I would assume it's rather standing up. No, because we don't want to trigger it through the edema. And for the work, we are actually entering 28, also to ensure that we are not triggering it through the work. And we are not being treated. It's not enrolled. And yes, to the vitamin A as well. Yes, this, no diarrhea. And the anemia will enter again 7.0. So, and now you see I wasn't asked to remeasure because the measurements didn't fall into an implausible range and they were not triggering SAM, but I get the notification that the child should be referred for moderate acute malnutrition. So this is helps the enumerator to know when to fill out actually a form. Right. Let's go just back for anemia. This has not been changed. It's just that it will actually be triggered independently from the MAM and the SAM. So you could have a MAM triggered and an anemia triggered. Like if I change this then to 6.8, leave all the measurements, then of course I'll still get a message for the moderate acute malnutrition. And I get the message also need to be referred for severe anemia as well. Okay. Maybe one more element and then I'll ask for more questions. I'll just start the full presentation so you can see it better again. So there is also something new that we have in the XLS form that I'll show you on the actual Excel form a little bit later, that we actually have the HB CUTOFF inside here. And also we have included instructions on how to change this if you need to be adjusting this based on the location that you are conducting the survey as well. Okay. Are there any questions at this point?
There is a question, but I think it's more to Fanny's part. It's about whether there is any update on the demography module for demography module after the pilot.
Okay, thanks, Chen. So last year we decided to remove one question in the demography module. It's the question about the respondent information. What is the relationship of the respondent with the head of the household? And we decided to remove this question because after we are not going to use this information for programs or other purposes. So it's the only change that we did after the pilot in Ethiopia and in Tanzania. We remove only one question. So I hope I'm answering to your question, Samuel.
Okay, great. I just saw it on the chat up there, so I'll continue. So what's also new is the reduced coping strategy index. I believe this has been covered in the previous webinars. So the only thing that I'm going to show you a little bit later is on where you can find this in the data and kind of how this looks like. But this gives you a glimpse in terms of the screenshots. This is the calculation. As you can see, it's based on fields that are linked to the coping strategy that you'd been answered, whether they have reduced meals, fewer meals, etc., whether they've borrowed and all of that. And then it's actually being recorded under this variable name RCSI under in the data. I'll show you that a little bit later. And similar to that, we have also a new calculation in the food security part, which is linked to the food consumption. And that is the food consumption score, the FCS. I believe that has also been covered and explained in the previous webinars before. Same thing, you have then your own variable in the name. This is kind of the calculation. As you can see, it's based on the food that had been actually been consumed, pulses, milk, protein, etc., fats, and so on and so forth. And then this is then how it actually is going to look like in your database when you've downloaded it from either Kobo or ODK aggregate. Okay, are there any questions? Okay, because I heard a ping. So on the wash side, it's not really different as such. The sources have been aligned more with the wash cap survey. So kind of the way the sources are being presented and which of the sources are considered to be a safe potable water, that has all been aligned to the wash cap. Idea being that if this SENS is being conducted, then the indicators that are being derived from the wash module could actually be used by the wash people as well. So this was the alignment, and the wash cap indicators, they have actually been aligned to the GMP as well to actually also allow reporting on these indicators. So this has all been aligned, and the calculations on the water supply has been changed a little bit as well, because you're now also calculating not only the available water but also the available potable water as well, just to also encompass that as an indicator if you want to report on this. Okay. Yes, that's already mentioned. The potable calculation of water quantity is now looking into the potable water and the protected water as well. So those are the two different elements that are being collected, and this is being collected by through the addition of one additional question, which is then being asking in the container loop whether the container is covered, and then by answering yes or no, that will actually then contribute to the calculation of the protected water as well. All right. Do you want me to demonstrate that, or is that part actually clear? I didn't necessarily plan it because it's not so very different to how it was before, but I can certainly do it if the time permits and you're interested in seeing it.
Maybe we can save this part of demo to the end if we hear any yes from the audience.
Yes, cool. That's
Okay.
great. I can go through maybe the full form in the end as well if people wish to see like the full household format.
Great.
Excellent. Great. Then I'll go to the next. So what's a new indicator as well is the access to SOAP, which is coming also from the wash cap, which we didn't have in the previous version before. And the idea is that, so the change is that you actually have presented within 1 minute and not presented within 1 minute. And that's kind of the equivalent to actually not having access to SOAP, as the idea behind is that if they can present it quickly, then they have it and they use it. And then the time limit is set to 1 minute so that they might not be bringing it from somewhere else, like from neighbors. Okay, then I would now be showing you the XLS form. I'll just jump out of the presentation here. One quick. Sorry. No, let me go through that slide first. So the what we have actually done is that we try to develop a global form that that allows you to easily localize it to a given setting. And the idea is really to have indicators that are comparable from country to country and from 1 year to another year. And in order to analyze this, you'd actually need to adapt it to your local setting as well. Having said that, there are some rules to how this could be done. I think I'll show this on the form rather, because I think it's a bit more visual on the form than here. So, So, what we have set up, and some of you might have seen this already because we already had some instructions in the version 2 of the SENS, but we've kind of made them a bit, revised them a little bit, and tried to make them even more explicit. So we have set up the XLS forms in different parts. All the orange tabs kind of explain a little on how you need to go on about it. So this is kind of the introduction. You could even switch the language here if you needed to, but since this is the English webinar, I'll leave it set to English. And this gives you, shows you really what you can be changing and what you shouldn't be changing. So for instance, you shouldn't be, here's a clear instruction that you shouldn't be changing core variable names at all. Because if you change the variable name, then all your analysis that you've set in the background with your queries are actually not working. So this is one of the elements. So all the orange tabs give you the elements that you might need to understand the structure and what to do about it. The green tabs are the survey tabs, and those ones you need to leave no matter what. In theory, once you have kind of done your survey and you're all happy with it, in theory, you could be removing all the other tabs except for those 3 green ones, because if you don't have the green ones, then you actually cannot be translating the form, either uploading it to Kobo or translating it through the XLS converter into an XML. And since those 3 tabs are actually needed for this to work. And the yellow one is the one that I've been showing you before just as a screenshot. That's the HB cutoff, where you can find the locations and how to reduce that. And in fact, no, let me go continue with the overview. So this XLS overview gives you the overview on the type of questions that are being used and explanations for what they're used for. So this is kind of defining what input you can get. Text means that you can type obviously anything. Integer means that you can only type full numbers, decimal that you can actually decimal numbers inputted, etc., etc. Select one, that you can only select one question, or select multiple, that obviously multiple selections are possible, etc. So these are kind of all the different prompts that will determine the way the user can actually input the responses. And this is kind of explaining the columns. I think the important part here to note is normally you should not be changing anything there, except for, you can see here this label with the 2 colons and then English. This is kind of determining the language, and you might not retain all of the languages currently. I'll just go to the survey that you can actually see to the top. Currently, the form is set up in English, French, Arabic, and Swahili. And for the language columns, you have the first one, the label, which actually determines how the question is being denoted. And then you have the hint, which is the little small print when you open a question that gives you some instructions. And you would need to have that for all of the languages as well. And then you also have constrained messages, and you should be having them for all of the languages that you are retaining as well. Now, normally you shouldn't need to change anything here. It's just in case you wanted to take a language off, that you know that the language part is actually on 3 different parts here for the questions. And then again on the choices sheet as well, where you have the choices. The choices is basically the options that you can choose when you have a question. Like the typical and easiest one is the yes, no. You have yes, no as an option, and then obviously you'd need that in every language way that you want to retain for that survey as well. So you need to have a column for that here as well. So if you wanted to either add, because you want to have a local language that's currently not being reflected, or if you wanted to remove, then you need to do it at 4 different levels. You need to have the label one, you need to have the hint, you need to have the constraint, which is further down here, and then on the choices as well. All right. So as I said, normally here you shouldn't have to change all that much. This is just kind of out of interest, or if you want to follow up, and this is maybe the most important part on why we also compile this, in case you're working together with an IMO in the field or an ICT staff who knows how XLS generally work, then that actually gives them some ideas on what was behind this survey and why it was set up the way it was set up as well, which allows them to change it without maybe changing the name of a variable accidentally. Because if you don't know, then you might think, oh, well, maybe this variable sounds actually much more closer to what I need. And having all these instructions helps you if you do it yourself, or whenever you work with an IM officer to know what should be changed and what shouldn't be changed. Here we've actually, in the instructions tab, we've detailed that even a little bit further, which are the optional SENS variables. They are kind of colored in green, and then the red is really the ones that you need to keep and that you shouldn't be changing, and the ones in blue that you can adapt depending on the local context, also explaining that the ones in orange are display notes, etc., etc. And here having some instructions on the adaptation, on where to adjust the choice lists, etc., etc. So for the survey itself, since I had been promising that I'll be showing you some elements here as well. For the implausible condition on the GPS, which I had mentioned in the very beginning, this what have open here is the child form, so it would be at the very end, since you would record the GPS at the household level and not at the individual level. And here it's in green because it's an optional variable, the GPS point. And you can see here. Oh, where is it? Oh, it's hidden somewhere. Sorry about that. I need to find it. It's here. Yes, it's in the relevant condition here. You have now the relevant condition 1 equals 2. The relevant is normally for all the skip patterns. If you put 1 equals 2, that's of course nonsense. 1 doesn't equal 2, which means that this question, as long as this condition is there, is actually not being shown. So this is the way how you can also be hiding questions instead of deleting them. So this would need to be removed. What we have changed in the last version, we had like all the comments like sitting directly on the fields, but we noticed depending on the Excel versions you're using and you're opening that the comments become really unsightly and very, very hard to read. And so we have added the comments now to the end of each of the in English and in French. Like here, it's now clearly says for the GPS build, if you're taking GPS points, you must remove the 1 equals 2 condition in the column relevant, otherwise leave as is. So all the comments on the adaptation can be found here. Now what I want to scroll to is the HP cutoff, since I told you, I'll also show you where you can find that. The HP would be somewhere work after the work, of course, because it's at the end. Wait. With the remeasurement, the form has become a little bit longer, but we think it was well worth the effort actually in doing this. Here is the cutoff. So, and here you have the instruction, and make sure to adjust the cutoff rate based on the altitude of the camp you're filling in. I just did. If you find your camp in the list of camps provided in the HBA cutoff, please replace the 0 in the calculation column from the current tab by the cutoff. So here you have the clear, here's the calculation column, here you have the 0. And if you need to, if you're in a camp where the cutoff comes into play, you're kind of replacing that. So this gives you kind of a bit of an overview on how the XLS forms are structured and where you can find help on how to adjust them. We also have the coding webinars. They are still on the web page in case you wanted to go over those. They're still relevant. And as I said, this also kind of helps you if you work with an IMO, then you can actually tell them, well, all the instructions are in the form and you know where you can show them, etc. And that gives you a bit of a head start on changing all the questionnaires as well. Right. Okay, so maybe I could actually be going through the forms, or you have any questions to the template?
Yeah, actually, there is a question on the household questionnaire. I'm not sure whether are we going to jump to the household questionnaire following this.
No, that's up to, I'm totally free, so we can take up the
Okay.
household questionnaire.
Okay, so there are basically, my understanding is two separate questions. One is that the change for this new version is that the demography and mortality has been separated with other household questionnaire. Why is that? That's my understanding for the first part. And the second question would be, what if we don't want to have the optional module like mosquito net, or worse, we don't want to them into the questionnaire? How would be able to either hide or delete them from the questionnaire?
Okay, great. Well, excellent questions. Yeah, the question on the demography, that's actually something we had been debating, because we had wanted to, well, obviously clearly have separate forms for the individuals and then have a separate form for the household. But it just meant that it would have become like a really complicated form. And we did think, since you actually need to start with the household composition first, to get a clarity and also have an idea on you know, which of the children are actually eligible and which ones you should be looking into for the child questionnaire, same with the women, etc. That starting with the demography household questionnaire seemed to be like the most straightforward thing to do. And then depending on how you organize yourself, you could actually have different people doing the different questionnaires if you have more than one phone, or if you're kind of a large enough team as well. But it would have been really complicated, especially since the mortality form is quite complicated with different loops to encompass the way that it's structured on ENA. We felt that the household form would be super difficult, and also then in enabling or disabling modules as well, which is why we opted to have it separately. So this is kind of tied a little bit to the second question on where to enable and disable them. Let me just quickly, no, this is not, sorry, I think I need to, no, this is, sorry, I need to go to the mobile forms. You wanted to see the household form. This one, yeah. No, this is the mortality one, this one. So at the end of the day, if you wouldn't want to do some of the modules inside, you would actually need to disable the questions that are linked to that. Let me scroll down a little. With the first part is the food security part. I would assume that most of the times this is actually being used anyhow. Then you have here the intro into the mosquito net, and then all of the mosquito net questionnaires. And you would actually need to disable them here, the questions that are linked to the mosquito net. Or if you, well, I mean, the easiest part could also be that you just enter no for the consent, but that's not a very elegant one. You could also be either inputting the implausible condition. Here you have relevant equals 1, but you could also have here 1 equals 2, and then the consent will not be given, and then all of those mosquito net questions would not be appearing. So that would be one way to go on about it. If you didn't need the mosquito one, that you ensure that the condition there is not met. You could, in theory, also be deleting them, of course. This you can see that this is the end group. So this is a summary of the mosquito net, and the begin group is up here. That's begin with 1 second, that's the net repeat. Up. Here, that's the mosquito net consent. So you could also be deleting all the ones here. We didn't, we could have grouped them a bit differently, I think, to make it, to just disable the one group. But then we would have had the variable name slightly differently. So that's why we'd opted for including it all in that. Is that helpful, or should we actually ensure that we put full instructions on how to disable a module inside here, which we could?
I found the function of putting 1 equals to 2 is very easy, which means that we don't have to change all, make any addition to all the questions like delayed or what if we want them in the future. So 1 equals 2 is very easy. However, I think it should be included in the instruction.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. We could, because we've only put it into instructions for one particular question, but then we could be including it in the instruction as well if you didn't want to do the a module. I'm assuming the most likely module not to be done would be the mosquito net after all, wouldn't it, right? Because they might not be distributed everywhere, correct?
Yes.
So I'm assuming food security and WASH is much more likely to go ahead, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, then let's include instructions on how to disable the full module for the mosquito net and include that.
Great.
Okay. Excellent. So should we maybe go through the household form on the emulator, or are there more questions on the XLS?
Yeah, that would be great.
Cool. Then let me go to my emulator. Up. Okay. Save the changes. Okay, and then let's fill blank form. Ooh, I think I haven't downloaded it. Then I need to go and get blank form. There we are. So that's a nice refresher. Okay. And then fill the blank form. Okay. I mean, the beginning is very much the same as it always was. Just put a 111 here. And now we're entering the food security part of the household module. So and then just to show you, if I can go no here, I'm actually being taken to the mosquito net part straight away. So in theory, I mean, that I know that's a bit cumbersome because your enumerators would always need to pick the no here. But in theory, if you need an easy solution out, then that is also possible. Yeah, but let me go back just to say yes. Here, this is fairly straightforward in the sense that there is not all that much new here. So 20. There are a few more elements. That's it. oh, maybe I'll just do this just to show you that that of course in this form as well there are kind of skips and balances put in that you can't select implausible choices. Food voucher. Okay, so yes. This is also more detailed than before. No, let's put what. And more additional questions on this. Yeah, those are the coping mechanism questions. Just to show you. The thing is the calculation on the RCI, they are not being shown to the numerator. So that what I've showed you, you can actually only see in the back end. So let's say yes. And you can see some of these questions are actually new or have been rephrased a little bit as well. I mean, this question had been in there and also in the version 2, but this is now an expanded version in version 3. Encompassing more options or more situations, if you so want. Reduce expenditures. Yes. Plus days, let's put 6. For food or rely on help. 2. Reduce meat. Food portion size. So, I'm just answering randomly right now. I don't think I'm drawing up a plausible scenario at the moment. And then here we are again at the food security part, which you kind of do know, except that it's now to record the number of days. This is also additional question that we didn't have before. Well, let's put that because we answered before. And now we are entering into the mosquito net usage survey. I'll quickly just show you, because I did say that I would show how the calculation looks like. I just this is a database from a pilot that where Fanny was part as well, and here you can see how the calculation would actually come up. And just move. Oh, it doesn't let me move at the moment. I'll try to move to it later. It seems as if my Excel is bugging up. Okay, then let us continue here. So this is the mosquito net part. The mosquito net part, again, as I said, if I now say here no or say absent, then I'm actually jumping straight ahead to wash. So the mosquito net part has not really changed all that much. It again asks you for the members and also pregnant women, the children as before. This is also a question that you had before. Then the mosquito net part is also like it was before. So you would then be guided through the brands and here you could also be under the choices. You could be entering your choice as well if you needed to. Say yes, and then the second brand. Let's just take other, just to have the difference. So, okay. Well, no, let's put it that way, just to show the again. Then here I get the options that I've picked before to pick from. Then the third one, I'm at number 3 now. Yes. And now here, I just wanted to demonstrate you. I think we had that in the version 2 already, but just that you can see it as well. Since I did not declare the woman as pregnant, I actually get these this notification now that I need to review. And now I get my summary. Slept under a net of any type and slept under LMN. So this is kind of not new. It's the same as it was before. In between, we had a little bug on showing the type of options, but with the new version of ODK, this has actually been removed. So normally that should be working for everyone again. If it does not, then you might have to update ODK. All right, so we are at the wash question now. Same thing, if I answer no here, then I'm actually at the end and taking the GPS reading, which was enabled for this questionnaire. So let's say yes. Total number of household members. I mean, since I need to be consistent, I need to be putting here 3 as well. And then at the end of the day, this is pretty much the same, except that it was rearranged a little bit differently, and making sure that the values that are behind the variables are the same as they are in the wash cap. So if you are exchanging the data and you're plugging it into a query, that for sure a value to it will be the hand pumps and boreholes in both, and not that you actually have to match back on which of the options is kind of which type of value as well. So this is also similar. This is now the new question that I had showed you as excuse me, as a screenshot before, that you have now the option presented within 1 minute or not presented within 1 minute, or no soap. And now this is the container loop as we had them before. Let's make it 2 here. And we use a jerry can as the first one. The volume, let's say 25. Is the container covered? Let's say yes. We'll make 2 journeys. And we are at the container 2, since we said we had 2 containers. Let's take a bucket here. Volume, let's say also, let's say 20. This one is not covered. And we also do 2 journeys. So, and now my answer is a bit stratified. I have the total quantity of potable water is 90 liters, but the total quantity potable and covered means coming from a protected container, which was only the jerry can, since we said the bucket was not covered, is 50. And the total quantity stored is 25 liters. Okay, and here it's kind of calculating the liter per person per day, the average potable and protected, which of course is lower, the average transported and the average stored per person. But this is kind of new. Obviously it won't work if I start a geo point here now, since the emulator can't do the GPS recording. And now I'm at the end. This is also similar as you know before. I say yes as an interviewer. This I don't fill unless the supervisor is present and has actually confirmed that everything is complete. But for the sake, I'll just say yes here now. And then I have the mark form as finalized. Normally we take that off. Since if the idea is for the supervisor to actually review the form or the survey manager to review the form at the evening, then we usually give the advice of changing something in ODK before, so that this is not being ticked by default. But this is something that we will go through in one of our following webinars as well. And I save the form and exit. And as you know here, depending on what household you have chosen, you actually have the form here, and that helps you to find. They're all called HH1 here because I tend to, when a demo, just put the 1 everywhere. That's why I have household 1, household 1, household 1. Okay, great. Are there any questions to the combined household form?
There is actually a suggestion on the instruction of the questionnaire to include both the idea of 1 equals to 2 to hide the whole module, and also mention about the delayed, the whole module or delayed only in the optional questions, which are those in green.
Delete, you mean like deleting them completely, or?
Like delete the row.
Okay. So instead of hiding those rows that are optional, rather to delete them as a suggestion instead of hiding them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, both is possible. I suppose the advantage of hiding them is if you are going to recycle the questionnaire the year after, and the year after those optional questions you actually want to ask, then you don't have to re-put them back, and you just can remove the implausible condition. So, so depending on whether you think your questionnaire will evolve, or whether you might be reusing it at a later stage, it can sometimes make sense to keep in those options instead of deleting it entirely. Because if putting them back in is of course a possibility, but then usually you have to test a lot more to make sure that they're in the right order, etc., etc. So
I mean, like for those optional questions, if I'm just right click on the row and to hide it, it will also not be shown in the questionnaire. Is that correct?
no. If you mean if I hide it on the Excel, yeah, no, I don't think so. I think you would need to delete it if you're just hiding the row. I've not actually tested that, to be honest. I can try and test that. What happens if I hide a row? But I doubt it. I think when you upload it, a hidden row will still be parsed into an XML and will still then show up actually. When I say hiding, it's really through these implausible conditions. So the question appears in my XLS, but it's actually not been shown to the enumerator because it doesn't appear on the phone. So as I said, the advantage of doing that is you still have the question in if you actually need it at the later stage, and then it's less cumbersome just to remove these relevant condition instead of recopying back in where more mistakes can actually happen. But of course, the having like keeping everything in when in fact you only have one small module. It means that the data behind it will have very many empty columns. So depending on whether that is annoying to you or not.
Right. So it's actually good to keep both options, I think.
Yes,
yeah, just like you said, it's totally up to the person who the survey manager who prefer which way to work.
Yes, I mean, as I said, the higher risk is if you're kind of deleting a question. The risk in that sense is that if you have to put it back in, it usually is a bit more cumbersome, and a mistake can happen more easily as if you're just changing it in the relevant. You're just putting the implausible condition there. But yeah, as I said, I mean, if it's something that if you're very certain that you're never going to do the mosquito net survey, you might as well delete all the questions related to the mosquito net survey. You know, if it's not just a temporary thing, if there's never a mosquito net distribution because mosquitoes are simply not an issue in the area where you are, then you might as well delete it straight from beginning and never use it. So I think it depends a little bit on a long term, whether it's easier to keep the question in and just make it impossible for the enumerator to see for that current survey, or whether you're very certain that this is a question that you will never going to use, in which case you could as well also remove it.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I actually from the chat box we heard Yagu mentioned he or she, sorry, would prefer to hide them instead of delete. So there are two options, and both will have some people's preference on each. So it would be good to include both of the options in the instructions, so the people will feel okay either way they do that.
Sure. Yes, we can. We can highlight the pros and cons of both approaches, and then people can take an informed decision on what is more relevant for their situation. Yeah, no worries.
Great, thanks.
Any additional questions or other elements?
No, seems like no.
Okay, I think we're actually 10 minutes early, so so if there are any kind of imminent questions, we can certainly take them. Or if you want me to go through one additional form, that's certainly possible.
All right, so you have finished all your presentation.
Yes, I have.
Great. Since we still have 10 more minutes, I will just open the floor to all the audience. If you have any question, please feel free to either message it in the chat box or just raise your hand or unmute yourself to ask. Is there any questions? Okay, Fanny, is there anything from your side?
Maybe just in addition to what Sandra explained about the decision to separate the demography form from the other household level questionnaire, this decision was also related to sampling, because if you remember what we explained last week in session 3, the demography module to be included in all SENS surveys with the anthropometry and health module, but for food security, wash and mosquito net coverage, maybe, yeah, like Murugeta explained, sometimes there is no need to include the mosquito net coverage module. So for why we decided to separate the demography from the other household-based module, and also because for sampling, demography will be administered in whole household selected for the survey, but for the other questionnaire, for security, wash and mosquito net questionnaire, that will be only in half of the selected household. It's also why we decided to separate the in two forms. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thanks, Fanny. And see, there is one more question. Downloading the data members and container sheet does not indicate camp name. Is it not important?
Thanks. I can see the chat now since I've stopped sharing my screen. Thanks, Tiras.
Right.
Actually, it is not, because all the calculations that you need for your indicators are actually done after you filled the net and the member sheet. The only reason why it could be important is if you were to analyze this separately. But normally you shouldn't have the need to analyze this separately. What we try to do to ensure that there can't be a mismatch, or that people do not accidentally enter things that are then like I've demonstrated, where I actually said in the beginning it's a pregnant woman, and then when the women come under the member loop, I actually said she's not pregnant, and then I had the notification that there is a discrepancy and that I should go back. So we tried to anticipate that that the information that's being entered on the member side kind of corresponds, and the way we are drawing in the names of the nets actually does also help that you are not getting confused what nets are available, and you can actually choose the right net that goes with the right member as well. So because we've tried to do all these cross-check and balances and make sure that this is kind of entered as cleanly as possible, or if it's not entered cleanly, that you get a notification. The calculation that's then being shown in the end, where you actually have your summary, should in theory be sufficient for your indicators, for reporting on your indicators, which is why we have not included the camp name in the member loop and in the and also for the container. The container is on the wash side, right? Also for the container one, because the calculation is actually being done outside. Have you experienced a situation in the field where you would have actually needed the camp name to go with the container sheet or with the member loop?
Tiras, if you want to just unmute yourself. We cannot hear you, Tiras.
Yeah, maybe you need to type, Tiras. For some reason we can't hear you. But just to summarize once more, the reason why we have the camp name into the child and the women loop is because we do believe that you might actually want to analyze that separately, and you need to have the camp inside there. But for the since the container loops as well as the member and the net loops on the mosquito net are really meant just to make it easier for people to list instead of doing summaries in their head, but that the summaries are being calculated directly in the application, we didn't think it would be necessary to carry forward the camp name. I mean, if you have a clear example on where you think it would be useful to have it, this is something we can revisit, of course.
Okay. So maybe I just raise another question that we have heard from the French session. It is about the consent given to the children. Is that the consent be given to each child? And the second question, is it given to the children or mother or caregiver?
Right. I mean, from the procedural point of view, I can tell you that it needs to be given for every child. From the conceptual point of view, whether I guess the caregiver, but maybe that's a question that should rather go to Fanny or Ho Chen on if I would assume the mother or the caregiver, but maybe
yes,
you guys want to take that question.
Yes, you're right, Sandra. The consent will be has to the mother or to the caregiver of the child, and for all children under 5 in the selected household.
I can see another question from Christine, Nakimera Christine. While using ODK, where do we upload the XML file? Well, this is actually part of the next webinar, the second one on the MDC part. The XML file you need to upload when you work with aggregate. When you work with Kobo, you're uploading straight the XLS file, but we will show you where you can upload the XML file. If you want, I can already give you the URL for the online converter, because there's an online and offline converter that could be used. I'll just need to Google it quickly to have it ready. So this is the, oops, sorry. This is the URL for the online conversion tool, where you can convert an XLS form to an XML. It is actually also handy, even if you're using Kobo, it can sometimes be handy to push it through there because it shows more than one error. So if you you shouldn't have to do this for the SENS forms, because the way the SENS forms are composed, normally if you follow the instructions, you should not have any issues in uploading them. But for if you were working on your own form, then it sometimes can be useful to use this tool as well. Oh, right. And I have another question from Tiraz. Can you clarify the use of the WZ lower and upper generated in the child form during the analysis? Ha, that's a tricky question because I've implemented that calculation without without being an expert in these type of calculations. But what it basically does, it calculates the, and Kitchen, please jump in if I'm saying nonsense. It is there to actually calculate the upper and the lower bound. And then it's being compared with the actual height. And then if the actual height is outside of that, then it will raise a flag, and it's usually then remeasure, because then it's kind of outside of the plausible range. Please tell me if I'm wrong, Kochen.
No, you are absolutely right. I'm just thinking for this question specifically here, we won't use this lower and upper to for the analysis of the anthropometry after then. It's more like during the function when we are using the mobile phone to collect the data. This variable will be used to make the backstage calculation, and will push a notification of whether this child is SAMD, or whether the child is MAM, or whether this child needs to be remeasured according to the criteria we have been set backstage, which is the weight for height z-score less than -3. And how it works is exactly what Sandra just introduced. So yeah, we don't need them for the anthropometry data analysis. Hopefully it's clear. All right, and we are quite on time now. And please feel free to email me anytime if you have any more questions, and we will have more time to discuss both the question on MDC and the question on SENS new version on the session 6. And just to remind that we will still have the session 5 next next Wednesday at the same time, using the same link to participate in. All right, thank you all, and thanks Sandra for the wonderful presentation, and looking forward to see everyone next Wednesday. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Just before to finish, we would like to inform you that tomorrow.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's okay.
Sorry.
Not just that tomorrow, at 2 p.m. Geneva time, the Technical Rapid Response Team and ICF Canada and the SMART team are holding a webinar to support nutrition survey in the COVID-19 context. And this webinar will present the recently released SMART guidance on restarting surveys. So for those who are planning to implement a SENS survey or SMART survey in the coming weeks or months, we would like to encourage you to register to this webinar to be up to date regarding the recommendation and protocol to follow, the supplies to order in addition to the standard equipment, all these things. So okay, the link is already in the chat box, so you can register for this webinar tomorrow at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Thanks, Fanny.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Sandra.
Thank you.
Oche?
Yeah.
The survey for the evaluation is closed now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you can share with me the results.
Yeah, for sure. I will do that.
I did the analysis for the French participant, but it was easy to do. There are only 8. So
Okay. All right, so I will end the meeting.
Yeah.